News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Joining us now, we have in studio, we got State Representative Brant Smith is with us. Brant, welcome back to the program,
Well,
sir.
good morning, Paul. Thank you for having me.
Real quick, what's going on with the legislature right now? Is the special session still going on?
No, it ended last Thursday.
Okay, and everything got wrapped up?
Everything's wrapped up, and we're just ready for basic committee meetings from time to time and maybe some other business, but we're done.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on being elected the whip of the caucus.
Well, thank you very much. It's an honor to be the majority House whip and just serve not only the caucus but the people of our great state.
Yeah, it's really, really good. I'm excited about that, and because I know what your voting record is, and so it's good to whip that platform of the Republican Party.
Well, and here's the thing: the word whip has a negative, definition attached, but to me, it's more about influence. It's more about encouraging legislators to, at least in the Republican Party, and I would even encourage Democrats to support the Republican Party platform. It's a good platform.
It is a good
one.
But
just to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm going to do.
There's an old Seinfeld episode where they ask, well, what does the whip do? And Kramer's like, well, because, Kramer doesn't know. He just talks to him. Well, in the olden days, if people weren't voting the way the party wanted to, they whipped them.
Fortunately, we don't actually tie anybody to a post and make them conform, but there is an opportunity for me to show influence. Well, I would have been whipped a lot.
yeah,
and was as a child, so I don't want to go back to those days.
Recently, we're talking with State Representative Brant Smith. Recently, you were. I'm sorry. Let's just talk about the letters to the editor. So there was a letter to the editor from Senator John Cooper. Now you represent District 58. Okay, which is you're actually my state representative. So congratulations on having that honor. I moved. I was in Ladyman's district, and he's very relieved that I'm
his
no
loss
longer.
is my gain.
Oh, okay. All right. I appreciate that. So you're in 58, which is in Jonesboro, and so Senator John Cooper, who is the senator for a good part of Craighead County, he actually penned a letter to the editor critical of you and three of your colleagues from this area in Craighead County and the House because of your vote against the DHS budget that included Arkansas Works Obamacare. And he was very critical. There was a response from State Representative Dan Sullivan that I thought was really good. What's your reaction to that letter from Senator Cooper?
Well, first of all, John has been a good friend of mine for a long time. And, he did veer off in a different direction after he was elected to the Senate, and it created some concern or wonder what happened. And but the rest of us have been consistent. We've done what we said we'd do, and we've voted very conservatively over the last two sessions. And so when his letter came out, and I usually read early in the morning, it was just sad to me because I know the depth of our friendship. And so after I attended two banquets and sat next to his table last Friday night a week ago, and then the next night on Saturday night, we were seated at the same table. And it was a little quiet, conversation wasn't as jovial as it typically was. But after I got home, I've got it here on my phone, 10:28, I got a text message. And he makes several comments, but then he concludes by saying, "You are better than that. You can't excuse that vote." So I sat there in my chair, and I was just thinking, if he could just let it go. Each legislator is responsible to his or her constituents for the votes they cast. No one should be publicly attacked like he attacked us. And so I mean,
if the situation were reversed,
he would be really angry with us.
And the
think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hello, welcome to the program. Thanks so much for being with us. You have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality, where we are building a liberty machine, and we can't do that without you. We want you to contribute to the program if you want. Sound off 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. Also over at Facebook.com/Conduit News. We're up and going there. That's Facebook.com/Conduit News. All right, so we have, at the bottom of this hour, we'll be talking with Mr. Dan Borum from the Patriots of Acts 746. That's always good and excited to have him on. Then at the top of the next hour, we've got Josh Waters from Political Strategies, the tax task force meeting. They've had, I guess, the meetings over the last 2 days, Monday and Tuesday. And so he was there yesterday. We're going to get his take on what was discussed and, maybe what can we see coming? I mean, are the people of Arkansas really going to get tax relief, or are they going to get tax shifting in an effort to protect the government's nest egg, the golden goose, if you will, the people of Arkansas constantly sending them money? Or are they going to cut spending? I mean, I think it's going to be more like a shell game than anything, but I'd love to be wrong, because that would mean government would actually shrink, and the base of the state would actually be represented. Again, the number 870-275-9799. Let's start first with let's start with numbers, because we have we haven't. I guess this has been up for a couple of days now and was kind of falling through the cracks. We haven't talked about it, but over at Conduit for Action, there is a good, I feel like, observation that's been made. If you go to look at this article, ASA's Magic Math. ASA's Magic Math, March 14th. So this was last week that this came out, but it's a really good one because you see right there ASA's face, and there it says 1 + 1 = 3. Right? So something apparently doesn't add up. Well, what is it? Well, it has to do with shifting narratives. Shifting narratives when, when you really want to keep a big government program, you say if you get rid of it, it's going to hurt the budget. But, of course, now we are moving, or at least the rhetoric is we're trying to remove people from a big government welfare program, and now it's going to save us money. People have memories. People can remember when the Hutchinson administration told us that we were going to lose money if we got rid or reduced a program. Now it's the opposite. We're going to save money, but if we get rid of it entirely, we'll lose money. That's what it is. That's their qualification, or their qualifier, rather. Their qualifier is, well, if we get rid of the whole thing, we lose money, but if we reduce it a little bit, we save money. And it's just strange. I don't think most people get how I mean, that's very double-minded. It talks about Governor Asa Hutchinson and his allies have demonized Arkansas legislators who want to end the expensive Arkansas Works program, or at least phase it out by freezing enrollment to those already on the program. The Hutchinson administration has claimed such moves would cause a huge budget hole. Yes, a huge budget hole. Hutchinson wanted you to believe the Obamacare program was the only thing saving the Arkansas budget. Note, Arkansas Works is the name of the governor's, we know that's what he decided to rename it to. In 2016, the Hutchinson administration used wild projections of cuts to essential services if state senators refused to vote for his program, Obamacare. For example, the Batesville Guard newspaper relied on the outrageous claims to attack Senator Linda Collins Smith, claiming her no vote on the Obamacare program would cause major cuts in essential services in Independence County. This was in 2016. This was going on. Asa has spent over 3 years pushing the budget hole notion. Now, when he needs to justify a reduction in enrollment because it's an election year, we find out that if the state reduces enrollment, Arkansas will save money, not lose money. The acknowledgement of a savings if enrollment is reduced vindicates legislators who have said the governor's Arkansas Works is draining Arkansas's budget at a time when there are many other state needs and taxes are already too high. Not only does the report of savings vindicate Senator Linda Collins Smith, it also vindicates Representative Josh Miller, who proposed an enrollment freeze, and Senator Brian King, who's been a persistent voice in saying the administration's budget numbers just don't add up. So you have today, let's fast forward to today, we have the Trump administration approving the waiver, part of the waiver that Asa wanted, the one basically saying, you can subject them to some form of work requirement, or you can subject them to some list of standards and call it whatever you want. We've chosen to call it a work requirement. Conduit for Action commentary writes, while this is a step forward, it doesn't necessarily mean work. Obviously, there are exemptions for some people, but what about those who can work? There are several ways to meet the requirements other than working part-time. Requirements can be met in other ways, such as spending time applying for jobs, taking school or college courses, volunteering, job training. Listen to this. I didn't realize all of this, but DHS expects the new requirements to result in the Arkansas Works enrollment going down. So the Hutchinson administration is shifting its talking points from a budget hole crisis without the Obamacare program to a revenue savings by reducing enrollment. You got to love how fluid they are with their thoughts and opinions, and the forced conclusions that they want us to reach with their talking points and their carefully crafted language. I mean, they can be over here one year and the next year somewhere else. And the majority leader in the House now, the majority leader to be, State Representative Marcus Richmond, in my opinion, famously back in 2015, took to the floor and talked about old truths and new truths, and how today is the new truth, and then the new truth, is going to be the old truth. And it's really, it's a shame how they think they can just manipulate, your perceptions and convince you it's the truth when it's misleading, if not outright lying, in many ways. It goes on, the human service. We're going to talk about the cost and effectiveness of these work requirements here in a minute, because we actually had a statistic the other day on the program that was not good, and I kind of just glossed over it. But in terms of the number of people, I mean, you got to think, okay, how many people are actually going to be put to work for this program, and how much is the actual apparatus going to cost to do it, and is that even worth it? And I'll give you an example of that here in just a minute. The Human Services Department estimated the new requirements will save Arkansas taxpayers $49 million next year. DHS acknowledged the estimate could go higher because the estimate is based on old numbers and is being updated. In addition, next fiscal year, the requirements will only apply to enrollees who are aged 30 to 49. Enrollees aged 19 to 29 won't be subject to the new rules until the following year. That's very interesting. Another factor to be considered in both the cost of the program and the potential savings from reducing enrollment is that Arkansas' share of the cost of the program continue to increase in each of the next few years. One factor that will reduce some of the savings is the cost to implement a new system of checking every 90 days to see if enrollees are complying. Yes, another big government program is needed to verify compliance. Okay, let's stop there. Let's go over to this is what I was talking about. This Health Affairs article that came out. Hang on one second. The date on this is this was this week, right? March the 19th. Okay. Over at healthaffairs.org, they break down a few states here. You know, there's a lot to learn from state Medicaid experiments, but only if they're carefully evaluated. Okay. It's by a woman by the name of Ann Weiss. Okay. Now, see right there. Hang on one second. Let me show you something, because this is the big deal. Robust. So this is a quote from the article where they break down a little bit of Arkansas. They say, in addition to exploring the outcomes of new programs, evaluations should also assess the way in which they were implemented. For instance, many states are proposing new policies that are more administratively complex and may be very challenging to implement, such as the creation of new integrated data systems or consumer-focused communication campaigns. States also need to understand the resources needed to launch a new program. For instance, approximately 7,000 Arkansas Medicaid beneficiaries actively participated in the state's new premium assistance program for private insurance. This is Medicaid expansion. So it wasn't a requirement that you participate in the and actually having to pay your premiums. Right, a very, very small amount. It was like $11 a month or something like that. But it wasn't a requirement, but it was an option, right? This was going to get skin in the game. This is going to teach people personal responsibility. Of course, people don't understand that if you're giving away a product for free and you don't have, people are going to take a product for free. I'll give you an example. People take stuff for free they don't need all the time. And the best example of this for me, and maybe this reveals me to be a cheapskate, that's fine. But if you go to the cash register at a restaurant and they've got peppermints and the peppermints are free, you take one, right? But if you go to the cash register at the restaurant and there's a little thing there for quarters, even if it's for charity, you think twice, don't you? Now, I'm not wrong on that, am I? People take stuff for free they don't need all the time because it's free. Anyway. 7,000 Arkansas Medicaid beneficiaries actively participated in the state's new premium assistance program for private insurance. The beneficiaries collectively contributed $426,000 in monthly premium payments, according to an analysis by the Arkansas Center for Health Improvement. However, the implementation incurred $9 million in administrative costs over 18 months. So let's just think about that for a second. This was, once again, if you go back and you listen to what these individuals were saying, if you go back and listen to what they said in 2013 when they were trying to convince us that Medicaid expansion wasn't Obamacare if you called it the private option, and because we're just going to give taxpayer money to Blue Cross Blue Shield and make them rich, that it was somehow free market idea, which it wasn't, but that's what they were saying. And then they also said, and we're going to and we're going to require these people to have skin in the game, and they're going to have to pay. They're going to have to pay. Of course, it was voluntary, and guess what? Out of 330,000 people that signed up for the program, 7,000 decided at least once to pay $11 or something, and they got $426,000 out of it or whatever. But it cost $9 million to implement. So that's something to consider now with these work requirements. They have to set up a system to check these people every 90 days to see if they're working and then remove them from the program, right? So, and it's supposed to, they claim it's going to remove, thousands of people. My question is, if it doesn't, how exactly how much money is it worth to spend, or potentially, let's use the word waste, if it's really not going to get people to have skin in the game or actually get people to work, or you know what I'm saying? I have a feeling we're going to have similar results here, where we're going to spend all this money on a program to track things, but it's not actually going to materialize anything, remotely conservative. But that's only because I remember what was said in 2013. I remember what was said, how they tried to sell it. And I know where we are today, and I know it's been a complete disaster the entire time. And, the Republicans somehow believe that they can do big government better than the Democrats. And they both just do it terribly. I will tell you this, though, and this is a sad statement, and I don't make this statement. I'm not glad to make this statement. But the Republican establishment in Arkansas are proving the Democrat Party right. Excuse me. The Republicans, the establishment Republicans in Arkansas, are proving what the Democrats say about Republicans. They're proving them right. I mean, what do Democrats always say about Republicans? They say Republicans are for the rich and they're for big corporations. And they're going to wield their power and they're going to put their friends in. Of course, the Democrats basically do the same thing. They just do it under the guise of trying to take care of people and, pitting winners, and they like to, divide people and stuff like that. But I mean, I'm not saying that, the Democrats are any better, but what the establishment Republicans are doing here, taking taxpayer money and making big corporations rich. That's exactly what the Democrats have been saying about Republicans for years. And I'm telling you, here in Arkansas, that is exactly what Republicans are doing.
Democrats are like magicians.
Oh, gosh, Joe, what are you going to say? All right.
Well, okay, so the point,
I like it. Keep going with it.
So a magician's trick, every good trick, has essentially a distraction. So the stagehand is usually the one, so whoever his assistant is usually the one setting up the trick while you're focused on the magician.
Right.
So Democrats are the same way. They have someone off to the side who's setting up all of this, oh man, I had it.
Conventions. They're setting up, theatrical conventions.
Conventions, not necessarily conventions either. There's a stagehand who is setting up all of this, setting up all of the government policy, all of the systems that are in place currently for their friends to benefit off of it, while you're looking at the Democrat and they're saying, "Oh no, this is going to help people. This is going to be better for you."
So the magician is saying that this is going to help people.
The magician is the one spouting all of the stuff that you're supposed to pay attention to, while the stagehand is the one setting up the trick.
Yeah.
And in this case, it's them setting up the program. Yeah. Exactly, the illusion itself.
Yeah. So what's the Republican? If that sounds like a Republican to me, that just sounds like a politician, not necessarily a Democrat.
Well, I just see more in Democrats, I guess.
Yeah.
Because I get to hang out with super cool Republicans all day.
Ah, yes. Thank you, Joe. That's really good, though. I like that. And any type of analogy that you do on a stage is exactly right, because a lot of this is just, cheap parlor tricks, and they're hoping that the people fall for it. All right, we're going to take a break. Back in just a moment. Who's next to Zipline?
Me, and I'm really excited about this.
Sir, I'm sorry. The Zipline has a 350-pound weight limit, and frankly, I do not think it would be safe for you.
Oh, that's okay. I self-identify as 180 pounds, so it's cool.
Sir, that
doesn't make any sense to me, and I'm afraid we can't let you ride the zip line. You're too heavy. I'm sorry.
I can't believe this. I thought we had evolved as a society. I thought this was America, but I guess this is just my plight. First slavery, and now fat shaming.
Sir, again, I'm really sorry.
You listen to me. If you don't let me ride, not only will I sue this company for discrimination, I will sue you for damages because right now my feelings are so hurt and I feel embarrassed because I'm holding up the line.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Watch it, mister.
Look, okay, I'm sorry. I just don't think it would be safe for you.
You don't understand. I self-identify as skinny. So you have to let me ride the zip line. The Constitution says so. I get to define my own reality.
Oh, you know what? Okay, fine. Whatever. Ride the zip line. Mike, let this man ride the zip line.
Thank you. Now watch as my self-identity trumps your bigotry. See you on the other side, racist. Here I go! Doctor, thank goodness. What's the prognosis?
Sir, we've done everything we can, and you only have seconds to live.
No, you cannot say that. I do not self-identify as a dead person.
PHP Parody. Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, so Joe, you met or you didn't meet, but you got to see like a Christian a comedian a few weeks ago, right? Or he was a host at an event you were at, right? And first, so you did get to see this guy, right?
Yeah, okay, so
what's his name again?
His name is Jaron Myers.
Okay.
So I was at the One Life D Now here in Jonesboro, and he was the host, so to speak. He wasn't the speaker for the weekend. He was the host. He was really funny. He is a comedian for a living.
Okay.
For a living.
For a living.
He's a comedian
living life
for a
and loving it.
Yeah, he's a comedian for a living.
Okay, so before we get into this is what's so funny. He's done this bit, and it's fantastic. But I would tell you that most of if you were to ask somebody, like, what's the best, like, restaurant customer service you can get in terms of just like a, very, very friendly, and it's just consistent. And a lot of that would be, a lot of people would say Chick-fil-A. Employees at Chick-fil-A are incredibly polite.
Because of one statement.
Yes.
It is my pleasure to serve you.
Right. And so he makes this rap, and it's probably one of the funniest things I've seen in a long time. Listen to this. And it's just him. The video is him running around helping people and serving people.
My name is Jerry. How can I help you today?
Oh, my gosh.
Welcome to heaven. Ooh, yeah, I mean Chick-fil-A. Roll up to your table, smiling like a fool. Sorry if I'm awkward. I was homeschooled. Hey, you don't have to bow your head. Nah. You don't have to pray for your food. Nah. Had a Bible study in the back. We already pray for you. Pre-bless. It is my pleasure to serve you. Hey. It is my pleasure to serve you. Hey. We're serving the chicken the Lord's way, unless it's a Sunday. My pleasure to serve you. It is my pleasure to serve you. Hey. It is my pleasure to serve you.
He's mowing this lady's yard.
Way, unless it's a Sunday, my pleasure to serve you. Would you like perfectly crafted and drafted Polynesian sauce? Dipping and dabbing, using your napkin. You know they extra soft. Keep an eye out for the refill. Fill it up till it spill. Splash, 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 splash. Would you like coca iced tea?
This is
fantastic.
fantastic.
You know the lemon's fresh squeeze. You know it. Whatever you need, just ask. Cause I can do all things. It is my pleasure to serve you.
So, all right, we're out of time. Anyway, eventually, we have time for it. Okay.
It is my pleasure to serve you. We're serving the chicken the Lord's way, unless it's a Sunday. My pleasure to serve you.
So eventually he keeps doing all these random acts of kindness as well as working in the Chick-fil-A restaurant. And then at the very end, he is literally carrying a burn victim from an exploding car away. Like, that's how it ends. He's walking away from an explosion, saving somebody's life. It's great.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Joining us now, we have in studio, we got State Representative Brant Smith is with us. Brant.
And sat next to his table last Friday night a week ago. And then the next night, on Saturday night, we were seated at the same table. And it was a little quiet. Conversation wasn't as jovial as it typically was. But after I got home, I've got it here on my phone, 10:28, I got a text message. And he makes several comments, but then he concludes by saying, "You are better than that. You can't excuse that vote." So I sat there in my chair, and I was just thinking, if he could just let it go. Each legislator is responsible to his or her constituents for the votes they cast. No one should be publicly attacked like he attacked us. And so I mean,
if the situation were reversed,
he would be really angry with us.
And the establishment would be feigning this, virtue
So here's what I
signal.
wrote him back, and I'm just going to read it if you've got time.
Absolutely.
When you were near death, your colleagues prayed for you, visited you, and showed a lot of concern. You repaid our kindness with a very public and offensive letter to the editor. Every one of us have consistently voted against the private option, and Arkansas Works. I would have supported SB 30 if the Arkansas Works portion had been pulled out for a separate vote. Unfortunately, it was not. When we get waiver number 2, which is reducing the eligibility rate poverty levels, from 138 down to 100%, I'll be more favorable. What you have done is the most mean-spirited thing I've ever seen happen from a friend. You will certainly have a primary opponent in the next election cycle. I would suggest you write a second letter to the editor apologizing to your colleagues.
Wow.
And then I blocked him from my phone and from my Facebook page. I just felt like I'm not going to be hammered repeatedly over this. So he's one of the few people I've blocked in my life.
Wow.
And I just thought, I can't go any further with that.
Yeah, and if you read the letter, and I guess we read it on Thursday or Friday, and then we read State Representative Sullivan's response to it, and now your response to it. I mean, it's just it's interesting that just a difference of opinion. He would turn around and really use Democrat talking points to try to demagogue, health care, and he'd said everything but throw people out of nursing homes.
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I want to remind you this segment of the Conduit News Radio is brought to you by the Patriots VAC 746. They are on a mission to educate the people of Arkansas about your Second Amendment constitutional rights here in Arkansas, as well as Act 746 specifically, owning or carrying a weapon, rather, has been decriminalized, and that is because of Act 746. And so find out more. Look them up on Facebook. They're a 12,000-plus strong group on Facebook. It's the Patriots of Act 746. And joining us now to talk more about this, we have once again Mr. Dan Borum is up with us this morning. Dan, welcome, sir.
Good morning, Paul. How are you doing this morning?
I am doing well. What about you? What's new in your world?
Oh, my. Lots of things are new in my world. It's been a very busy world here lately. Sometimes, hey, Paul, you ever feel like you're beating your head against the wall?
Yes. Quite. I mean, yeah. Like every day? Yeah, absolutely.
I think most people who do fight for the good and the right and our constitutional values do feel like they're beating their head against the wall many days, but we can't quit. We can't throw the towel in. We got to keep fighting, brother. And before you introduced me, you was talking about the Patriots of Act 746. And I'll just reiterate again from several times back when I was on your show that this is one of the greatest groups that I have ever joined. Back when I first joined, I didn't know very much about our gun laws in Arkansas. I just, I drank the Kool-Aid and I just believed the lie. And these people educated me, and what they did, they whetted an appetite for me to start researching for myself and to educate myself through good resources. And I've come so far because of that. I've got a long ways to go and learning more. And your program, great men and women and the Patriots of Act 746 that debate with one another, iron sharpens iron, and man, it is unlimited of what you can learn through good groups such as this. So I encourage people out there who are listening to, if you've never looked up Patriots of Act 746, I encourage you to do so.
Yeah, no doubt. And, the people there are great. And, I mean, one of the reasons that this, relationship exists, I mean, not only am I a huge, believer in the Second Amendment as a human right,
right.
I also know that these are engaged citizens, and I want them to also, stick around this program and listen to, our tax policy. What is the state of Arkansas, in terms of, are we growing government or are we shrinking government? Because I know that having a limited government is important to most believers in, the Second Amendment and Act 746, and it's actually really, I believe it's worked out very well in terms of getting the information and really just getting like-minded people together to organize, in an effort to have a government that reflects the will of the people. And right now, we don't have that as much as we should,
No, we do. We absolutely do not. It's very aggravating to me that when you look at the Republican platform, one of the number one things in the Republican platform is limited government, letting the people rule themselves. That's what the Constitution, that's why the Constitution was written the way that it was. It wasn't to limit the people, it was to limit the government. And so the Republican platform is limited government. And yet we see this government growing. And I get very aggravated from a local level to the state level because so many who are called Republicans, they choose party over principle rather than looking at the principle over party. And I believe in principle. If you call yourself a Republican, yet you do not stand on that true Republican platform of limited government, lower taxes, then I'm not going to choose you because you have your name as a Republican. I'm going to choose the principle. And yet that makes many so-called Republicans angry. I don't understand that, Paul.
Yeah, I'm not sure either. I kind of wonder if if there's an active deception. Do they really just want the power and that, they campaign on popular ideas and then they get in there and they don't want to implement those ideas, or they come back with excuses as to why it can't be done, or you just don't know the way things work in the Senate or the way things work in Little Rock, and it's really, really frustrating. There is a disconnect from reality down there for sure.
And that's it. There's a disconnect. And that disconnect is between the representatives, the senators, and between them and the people. And while I'll put, I can understand, you get down there, you get in the Marble Palace, and you're surrounded by your peers that are doing the same thing, and then you have the outside world that sometimes you can have a disconnect very easily. And the reason I know this is when I was in seminary for 5 years, I went to the Missionary Baptist Seminary in Little Rock over on Stagecoach Road. And it's a very good school, but I was around preachers day in and day out, sitting in a classroom with them. found myself having a disconnect with the outside world, with the people who needed to hear the gospel, the people that needed for me to serve them. And when I realized that, I repented, and I got back to what I was supposed to be. And I think there's that same scenario in Little Rock, that there's a disconnect. They forgot who they're serving, and then we the people need to stand up and quit being so apathetic.
Yeah.
And we need to make sure that they understand that they serve us.
Wow.
And that's what we have to do.
That is a really profound analogy about you going to seminary and being around everybody. You get in that bubble, and then you kind of get disconnected. That is a really, really good analogy, Dan. And I also want to make an observation. Yes, it is an election year, and yes, Governor Hutchinson has a primary, but he did go ahead and sign that pharmacy bill in the special session. You know, the pharmacists were being, he did do that, and I think there's a reason. I think one of the reasons is that the pharmacists were so organized. I mean, and they showed up down there, and they were a force to be reckoned with.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
That's exactly what it takes.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
If you don't show up, if you do not show up and show the power, look, our power as the people are in numbers. You go down there on a very hot issue, and there's 5 of you that show up. You think they're going to take you serious? Absolutely not. But there is great power in numbers, and it wakes them up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the governor knows. The governor knows that there is a growing number in the state of Arkansas that is falling in and supporting Jan Morgan, because just like the presidential election, across the nation, the people were sick and tired of the same old status quo from politicians. Therefore, that is why Donald Trump got elected. And I want to tell you something. There is a great big chance that will be the reason that Jan Morgan gets elected. And not only that, she's a very intelligent woman, and she knows what she's talking about.
Yeah.
She's not just guns. She's much, much deeper. And people need to listen to her. In fact, on March 30th in Alma, Arkansas, at Warren's Rec Room, March 30th, that's a Friday night at 7 o'clock. We are going to have there's a Jan Morgan rally there. She's going to be there. And she's going to come into town early. At 4 o'clock, she's going to be at the big A to Z sporting goods store, just meeting people and doing a Facebook Live. And it's going to be a really fun day. I'm really looking forward to it. And also, on that evening, before Jan comes on stage, I'm going to allow all of the local candidates, even from JPs, whatever they're running for locally, want to allow them to come across the stage and just introduce themselves and say what they're running for.
Wow.
And so I encourage any candidates to come out to this. And then, hopefully, Brian King and Senator Brian King and Representative Bob Ballinger will be able to come out, and I'm going to give them just about 5 minutes to speak before Jan comes on. And then probably around the 3rd week of April, if I can get the details worked out and I can make both parties happy, what we are going to have is a debate between Brian King and Bob Ballinger. They have already agreed to the debate. What I'm trying to do is work out the details, and that's where I'm beating my head against the wall sometimes, because that's a hard thing to do.
Yeah, no, don't give up. Just so.
Oh no.
That's
I'm not
good
gonna
though.
Give up.
Yeah, that's good. So that sounds like a great event. It sounds like a great night, a Jan Morgan event there in Alma. What's the date and time again?
Jan Morgan's going to be in town on Friday, March 30th. That's not this Friday, but the Friday after.
Okay.
And that's at Warren's Rec Room. It's a great venue. And at 4 o'clock, they're going to come into town early. At 4 o'clock, she's going to be at the big A to Z sporting goods store, which is just north of Alma. And she wants to meet a lot of people. So I encourage all of our local folks, and if you're in town, to come by A to Z sporting goods. This is where you're going to be able to just walk up to Jan and just say hello, get a picture with her, whatever it is, she's going to make time for you.
Yeah, that's great.
And then probably, I haven't set the date yet for the debate between Senator King and Representative Ballinger, but Senator King is the incumbent and Bob Ballinger is the challenger for Senate District 5. And they have agreed to the debate. And so I'm working out the details, and as soon as I get the details worked out, I'll be posting the dates on Facebook.
Wow. Dan, it's really great that you're involved in all this. I mean, we need, I just want to say, we need like 1,000 more Dan Borums out there in the world who are getting their hands dirty, you know.
And once again, I give all credit back to, first and foremost, to my great Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, that without him, I don't know how I could get up and face what we're facing in this world.
Yeah, well, I mean,
so I give thanks to God daily for giving me strength to fight the good fight, spiritually, and here what we're dealing with in politics.
Yep.
And also, I give credit to the Patriots of Act 746, some great men and women who took me under their wing and started educating me.
So let me back up just a little bit, because when we talk about how there is a disconnect down in Little Rock,
yes, sir.
I'm wondering, it is about getting the information to the people and getting it to the politicians, really. Getting them, breaking through and getting them at least a different point of view, and not the monolithic point of view that they hear from the top and from the lobbyists in the business interest. Now, and I think this is one of the reasons why the governor came out and attacked Conduit News last week. I think it's because we are now penetrating, we are now broadcasting, and we are penetrating and giving them some support, because I think there are guys down there that are conservatives and they just need support.
That they do need that support. They need that encouragement. They need to know that there are people out there who are lifting them up and getting up and bearing up under the load that they are bearing, helping them bear that load. Folks, we have got to do it. We have no choice. We can continue to stick our head in the sand and think, you know what, it doesn't matter. But I'm going to tell you what, you're going to reap what you sow. You want to sow apathy, you're going to reap it, brother. You're going to reap it. I'm telling you, friends, you better get out there and get involved. You better have some passion about it. You better have a little grit in your craw about it. Get involved, or else you're going to reap the consequences.
Dan Borum with Patriots of Act 746, thanks so much for coming on. It's always a pleasure to have you.
Hey, Paul, thank you so much for having me, and you guys have a great, great day.
Okay, you too, sir. Folks, it's Patriots of Act 746. You just search Patriots of Act 746 on Facebook. It's a closed group, but it's massive. Ask to be a member if you want more information about your Second Amendment rights here in Arkansas and the concept of true constitutional carry. Arkansas is a constitutional carry state, and you'll find a lot of information about that, whether it's open carry, concealed carry, and that sort of thing. And I think they are winning on this issue. They are winning the public's trust and the public debate on it. They still have a $1,000 reward if you can point to a place in the Arkansas law where you have to have a permission slip from the government to carry a weapon. We're going to go to break. Back in just a moment.
If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
It's a PHP parody.
Hey, man, you got any of that marble rock?
Yeah, I've got the hookup.
Thanks. I need a fix real bad. I'm itching to grow some government.
How much you need?
I'm gonna need a taxpayer's dime bag.
No problem, sir. 1 taxpayer dime of marble rock. Enjoy.
Thanks, man. They don't call it Little Rock for nothing. Am I right?
Did you know your state representative or state senator may be addicted to growing government? The drug is called marble rock, and too much of it will cause marble fever. Watch for the warning signs. Does your legislator suddenly display a lack of humility when faced with basic questions? Does he or she suddenly develop hubris and pride that was not present during the campaign for office? These are signs they might be smoking the terrible drug, marble rock. The solution? Detox. Vote for detox. Vote to send them home for their own good. Warning! Some politicians once voted out of office will not go home and stay in Little Rock to get their fix by lobbying, also known as the Burris Syndrome.
PHP parody.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
I will say what Dan was saying. What Dan was saying, Dan Borum, about when he went to seminary and how he got around so many like-minded people that then he became, kind of separated off from the world. And first of all, if that happens with a bunch of pastors, what hope do we have? No, in all seriousness, though, it really just shows our humanity, right? It really just shows our human tendencies, which is to, is to not be perfect, right? But at least you have to recognize it. And that's the thing. We have to have confident legislators who have accomplished, and this is my opinion, who have accomplished other things in their life. When they say, you know what, serving or being a state rep or state senator is not the greatest thing I've done in my life. I want people who say, yeah, I worked hard. I've got this business. I employ X amount of people. This is just ideally. I still have this business, and so actually, it's a burden to go serve. It's not some, and I know people say it's an honor and everything else, and it is, but it's a burden to go serve, or it should be. It shouldn't be like, I've arrived at the court of the king, and now I'm going to serve the court of the king. And that's not the way it should be, but that kind of is. It is. I want people that are like, you know what? I'm going to have to put my business on hold, Technically, this is like a step down for me to have to go do this from what I'm doing now. And it's really a selfless act. Leadership is service, and that's the way it should be viewed. And so, but just to recognize that your tendency is going to be, we want the best and the brightest. That's who we want to serve us. But to be able to recognize that the tendency is going to be cut off from your constituents, where everybody's coming up to you is asking you to do the opposite of what your constituents set you down there to do. It can be very taxing and vexing, can really wear down on you, I just feel like we have to have people that acknowledge the type of environment they're going into. And a lot of them don't. A lot of them think things are fine down there, or a lot of them think they want to get down there because they've arrived. But I think you have to have confident people who have done other things and been able to stand up to other people and been confident in their assertions before they get down to Little Rock, Now, some people are confidently wrong and are confidently growing government, but most of those are the establishment. It's the people who are not the establishment but are just kind of following things because they don't want the governor to make them suffer. That's the truth. They don't want the governor to make them suffer. And yet, last week, he attacks Conduit News. It says that we're a media machine. Well, we are a liberty machine, but he says that we're a media machine and we're trying to control legislators. He says that we were, and look, I think a couple weeks ago I told you what Conduit News is accomplishing. I told you what it's accomplishing. We've basically instituted a type of psychological warfare on the Marble Palace because our message is getting through, and there are at least people who are hearing alternative, an alternative news source where you're hearing what the platform of the Republican Party is. A lot of people need to be reminded of it, and we're actually telling people that government is growing and not shrinking, contrary to what they're saying, how they are constantly trying to spin things, trying to make you think that they are implementing the voters' will, when in reality they are implementing the will of the political establishment, the special interest lobbyists, the ones who want something from government, the ones who spend a lot of money. And I want to reiterate something, that a lot of the money that goes into lobbying is actually laundered taxpayer money, because many of these people have government funds, have taxpayer-funded revenue streams, and they have these contracts for whatever industry it is. It basically leeches onto government and leeches onto taxpayers, and then the taxpayers, money goes to this company, and then the company or industry is expected to tithe a portion of that back to the lobbying firm that they hire, or the political action committees, mainly the political action committees on these that represent these massive government interests, the Marble Palace monolith, if you will, and so a lot of people need to realize that it is expected that you're then going to tithe your government money back to these PACs, and that's what funds them, and that's what keeps this whole system going. It's what supports it all. And so the only way to stop that is to make the government less important, is to make the government less powerful, is to have less force. Okay, because if you do that, then you have more voluntary cooperation where the government is not as involved as much. So you're not relying on these taxpayer revenue streams. And of course, the big business and the big interest, they don't like that, because that means that they'll have to actually compete more in the free market. What we have so much is an attempted control, right? And it starts smaller than you'd think, but it goes all the way up to giving a bunch of money to Chinese companies with the hopes that they'll come and create 12 jobs here in the next 150 years. We got to take a break. One more hour. Don't you know that little statement there just drives them nuts? I'm going to keep saying it. We got one more hour. Don't go anywhere.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
So you know what I mean? Or throw Granny off the cliff. That's kind of the way he went with it, and I thought that was very interesting. Now, Brent, I want to ask you this, because he also made another accusation, Senator Cooper, and I have said for a long time, anytime I talk about Senator John Cooper, it is a personal thing with me, because I helped him get elected, and I believed in him. I thought he was a guy of principle, and I thought he really did believe in smaller government, and that's not to be true. And I'm really kind of ashamed that I was used in that capacity. But hey, there's lots of people that get duped by politicians and everything else. But he made an allegation that the reason you voted against the DHS budget that had Obamacare Arkansas Works in it wasn't because of principle or your personal beliefs. It was because of Conduit, what he calls an extreme Tea Party, or extreme Tea Party organizations and Conduit. And I guess my question is that why you did it?
Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, I haven't spoken with anyone from Conduit at the top as far as Brenda goes and Joe goes.
And they're going to be on, by the way, at the bottom of this hour.
Well, for more than probably a year. And they don't call me. They don't talk to me. They don't push me to cast certain votes. What motivates me are the promises that I made to District 58 back in 2014 when they elected me for the first time ever.
Mm-hmm.
And I stuck by my principles and my integrity. And actually, during the second election, I basically spoke in front of constituents then saying I did what I said I would do.
Yes, you did, yeah.
And as a result, I don't even have an opponent this time around.
Mm-hmm.
So this will be the first time in Arkansas history that a Republican not only has been elected twice consecutively to the state house
from this district,
but I'm elected already for a third time. And I just think, what an honor and a privilege. And I did have some people say, hey, you can vote any way you want now because you don't have an opponent. You're safe.
Really?
So,
wow.
And this was coming from the other side, the less conservative side. And I just thought, why would I do that to the people who have trusted me? I said, no. I'm going to hold my ground. And, like I said, I wanted to get to yes. I was there when SEMA was present and presented the first waiver. And I went
from the
down.
Trump administration.
Yes, and I went downstairs and sat in on a second conversation. And I really appreciated everything that happened during that time at the Capitol. But until we can get a little more of what has been promised or we're pushing for.
Which was the cost savings.
Yes.
I mean, that's what the cost savings were.
Until we could do that, I just stuck to my initial promise and said I can't do it. But as I read, I even told Senator Cooper, if we could get the second waiver, I would be more favorable.
Right. And I think a lot of people would have been in that boat as well.
Because we're moving the ball down the field to the end state.
Yeah.
Let's reduce the size
of the
program. Let's get working, eligible working adults off and back to work.
Right.
Let's give them something to be proud of themselves for, and that's a paycheck.
You mentioned your victory. We're talking with State Representative Brant Smith. So you mentioned you won. You had a Democrat opponent, which I believe actually was fielded by some establishment Republican interests. Or at least that's my. That was my gut feeling.
Maybe.
Because of your conservative voting record. And, of course, you defeated him by 12 points.
Right.
So it was a massive. Now, I'm just curious, Senator Cooper and the establishment, put pressure on you here. Senator Cooper writes this article, criticizes Conduit. This was almost 5 days before the governor came out and recently started criticizing Conduit. So we have a consistency of messages here in a few days. And so I'm wondering, in the past, have you ever received any pressure or anything from the establishment concerning, how you should run your campaign?
Well, back in 2016, I put some money into political advertising, radio, on your program.
Yeah.
And I had designated those funds weeks before I received.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Good morning, Arkansas. Thanks so much for being with us. It is hour number 2, and it's the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. This is Conduit News Radio. I'm Paul Harrell. We are building a Liberty machine. We want you to be a part of that. One of the ways you can do that is to call or text 870-275-9799. Or go to facebook.com/conduit news. That's facebook.com/conduit news. As well as, okay, Joe, thank you, the YouTube. Go to Conduit News' YouTube page. Subscribe to that so you can get our smaller videos. And not the full 2. You can get the full 2 hours there, too. But the smaller videos that are going to then, you can share those, little 5-minute videos. A lot of people, like you guys out there, are the conservative base. I mean, you guys are the heroes, right? But a lot of your friends, they say things like, I don't like politics. I just, it's like, I can't handle it and that sort of thing. Okay. All right, that's their prerogative, right? But they're in your sphere of influence, and they have time to maybe listen to a 5-minute video where they don't have time to listen to the full 2-hour broadcast. So our 5-minute videos or 6-minute videos, they're focused, they're interviews, and it communicates, kind of quickly information that they need to know about what's going on here in Arkansas. Speaking about what's going on here in Arkansas, welcome back to the program, Mr. Josh Waters from Political Strategies. Josh, good morning to you.
Hey, good morning, Paul. How's it going?
It's going well. So the reason we wanted to have you on, obviously, is because the tax farce on taxes met the last 2 days. You were at the Marble Palace. I'm sorry you had to go there, but you were there. So kind of tell us what the feeling is. What were the discussions on the tax farce this time?
Well, the meetings this week were basically on the sales tax, and specifically looking at sales tax exemptions and considering which ones to maybe take away, with the idea that, if we take these exemptions away, that technically can be considered maybe a tax increase because that money would then be flowing to the government, which was not flowing before. And so they're looking at all these tax exemptions, specifically sales tax exemptions, and seeing, okay, how much money would this mean if we got rid of this exemption? How much more money would the state get? And if they did get that money, what could they then do with it? Could they cut income taxes? Could they, not cut anything? Basically just trying to get an idea of what the value of these sales tax exemptions were. That was really the meat of this week's meeting, or this month's meeting. And then that'll flow into the April meeting, as they'll actually kind of be debating and looking at, recommending, yes, get rid of this tax exemption, no, keep this one, based off input from the industries that are affected from those sales tax exemptions.
Do you think they see ending an exemption as a tax increase? I mean, your definition I agree with. If it's more money going to the government, that would be an increase, right? So would they see it as an increase? What do you think?
I think it probably depends on who you ask. I think some people, they've gotten to the point where they realize now, one of the senators made a comment yesterday, well, we'll probably raise some and then we'll lower some and it'll come out in a wash or revenue neutral type way. And so I think there are some who are kind of seeing that we've been down this road a few times now where we'll raise taxes one place and lower them somewhere else. And some will try to praise it as a, tax cut, or I don't know what they'll praise it as, but it goes back to the idea of a revenue neutral tax cut, which really isn't a tax cut. And so at the end of the day, like you said, if the government's getting more money, and if you take away these tax exemptions, I mean, some of them may need to be taken away. They're probably not very justified. But if you do that, I would like to see, okay, well, we're going to cut spending, whatever that amount, to where it's, there's not more going out in spending. So we'll see. But in the April meeting, that's what they'll be debating. They gave basically a laundry list. Each member of the task force was given a list of all the exemptions, And then they went through and they picked off which ones they thought, okay, we need to come back and review this and debate this in next month's meeting and consider maybe or not about keeping it or ending this sales tax exemption.
We're talking with Josh Waters from Political Strategies. I saw the list that the DFNA put out there of the sales tax exemptions and the amount of money that the state's not getting because this is exempt from sales tax. And I saw one of at the top of the list was the gas tax. There's not a sales tax on gasoline. There is, but there is a gas tax on it. And so they're saying that's exempt. And I thought to myself, surely they wouldn't leave the current taxes that we pay on gasoline on and add a 6.5% sales tax. I mean, what are you hearing about that?
Yeah, so that's something that's actually come up a few times throughout this process in the tax force, because, like you said, it's not technically a sales tax the way it's structured now, but if they did add a sales tax, it would basically be double taxation on our gasoline. Now, when you look back, remember, Paul, in the 2017 session, that's what they're trying to do under Dan Douglas's bill. They're trying to add a sales tax at the wholesale level of gasoline. And that was going to bring in, I think, $217 million if they got that passed. And so they're going to be, again, looking at that at least as what some are considering that, well, that's a sales tax exemption, even though there is a type of excise tax on there already on the sale of gasoline. And so that's something they'll be debating. I'm sure, some of the more conservatives on the task force will hopefully again bring up, this will be basically double taxation on this product. It will increase prices. I think it was about 10 cents per gallon whenever the measure that they tried to pass during the 2017 legislative session. But that is one that at least one of the members of the task force wanted to put on the list to be considered for next month's meeting.
Has there been any discussion about how we got to this point in terms of the number of exemptions and carve-outs that there are in the Arkansas tax code? I mean, has there been anyone who's just fessed up to it and said, it's just kind of the nature down here that over the years, special interests have been successful in carving out their little areas where they don't have to pay any taxes?
Yeah, I think some legislators have been pretty upfront with that, and I think everyone realizes that's what's happened for most of this. But really, those are some of the smaller ones. Maybe a few $1,000s that the state's not getting, a $10,000 or so. Because some of the bigger ones are, like the grocery tax or the fuel tax. Some of the bigger ones are those, big ticket items. But yeah, when you look through some of these exemptions, I think I saw one. It's like specific entities or nonprofits or names, and so that's a special carve out if they start naming.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Specific companies. So
I've heard for a long time. We're talking with Josh Waters from Political Strategies. He was at the task force meeting on taxes, yesterday. I've heard for a while people complain that the reason government revenue is stagnant, which it's not. I mean, they keep getting more and more money from us every year. But that's what they claim, that the government is hurting because we have shifted away from a product-based economy where you actually go buy something and it's tangible and you hold it and you pay sales tax on it, to a service. There are way more services out there that people are purchasing now. It's more of a service economy, and services are not taxed. So they have a segment in there, or a section in there, about advertising, right? Or you think about the services that you pay for and how you're not charged taxes for that. So is there going to be a push, you think, to start taxing services right now where there is no tax?
There were a few services, but really not a ton that were kind of on that list that ended up going on this, master list, if you want to call it, that'll be reviewed in April. Now there were some, it was like subscriptions to newspapers, advertising on billboards, advertising on in newspapers, to sell newspapers themselves, that kind of a thing. So that's still not really much of a service. It's a product, an advertising, an ad in a newspaper, something like that. So there wasn't really that much of a push. I know Nicole Keating from the Tax Foundation was there on Monday, and I was not there in person on Monday. I was there Tuesday. But looking through the presentation, she worked with Acre, writing a really good outline of some tax reform ideas and kind of where we are in Arkansas. And I know that's something that they have mentioned is, okay, we need to add more services under the sales tax, or in some way tax it to make up for this, like you said, the change over time from more product-based purchasing to more and more services-based purchasing.
Okay. All right. Well, so I guess to kind of recap here, I'm worried like you that this is going to be more like, revenue neutral, and revenue neutral tax cuts are not tax cuts, in my opinion. But I'm sure there'll be plenty of people telling their constituents that they cut their taxes. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's still not clear. There's been some mentions from time to time. What's the end goal? Is the end goal, to get the top income rate from 6.9 to 6%? Is the end goal to get rid of the income tax? Is the end goal just to find enough money so that we can keep increasing spending like we are? It hasn't been super clear, at least from attending these the last several months, what the end goal is for the task force, because when you look at the mission and what they came out with, it was, tax reform. And so that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So the next few months, I think we're really going to see, okay, what's the goal? Because they're actually going to have to start listing out some recommendations on, okay, keep this sales tax exemption or not, or let's lower the income tax rate in this bracket by this much. So I think we'll see more of that going forward. But it hasn't been super clear, at least to me, what the end goal is for the income tax or sales tax. It's just been a lot of information, and I think maybe over the next few months we'll see some of the end goal recommendations.
Yeah.
One thing I did want to mention, Paul, though, that came up and was passed in yesterday's meeting was they passed at least the authority to enter into another consulting contract.
Oh, great.
And so if you remember, of course, you've covered many times on the show, Randy Bauer was the initial consultant that came on to the task force and was fired. And so they had one meeting without any consultant, and I actually thought that went really well, a lot of really good information from BLR and DFNA. And then this meeting this week was without really any consultant being there, but they have authorized up to, I think, $88,000 for a consultant for some dynamic scoring. It's the I can't remember the name, but it's some of the same people who did some of the dynamic scoring for the Big River Steel. So basically what they're wanting to do is say, okay, if we get rid of these exemptions, if we keep these corporate welfare incentives, if we make this change here, what's the dynamic score rather than just the
static
score of,
yeah.
Okay, we'll get $50 million less money. What impact will it have to this revenue stream or that revenue stream? So that's something that, did come out of the task force this week is this new consulting contract for dynamic scoring.
Interesting. Okay. Well, I guess we'll kind of see where we go from here. I mean, I'm a fan of dynamic scoring. I think that's where the left always gets you. They want to score tax cuts based on a static scoring level. I mean, but I don't know. It's just with what has happened with the whole consultant thing in the past, and these task forces have ended up being ways to just get to a predetermined result. I don't have a lot of confidence. But hey, I hope government shrinks. I hope they actually get the job done. That's where I am on this. And Josh Waters, I appreciate you coming on the program, sir, from Political Strategies. It's always a pleasure.
All right. Thanks for having me, Paul. Have a great day.
All righty. Josh Waters, everybody. We're going to take a break. This is Conduit News Radio. Good morning to you. Back in just a moment.
Bob Maloney here from ASA News, The Parrot. Breaking news from the Capitol in Little Rock. Over now to our new on-site reporter, Susan Shenanigans. Susan?
Thanks, Bob. The governor has just announced that a blue ribbon task force is to be formed.
Today, I'm asking your support for a blue ribbon legislative task force to be created and directed to recommend further reform.
Now we go live to the chamber to listen in for more information on the task force.
I hereby call this session into order. First on the agenda for today is the formation of the Blue Ribbon Task Force. Is there anyone who would like to give their thoughts on the task force?
Yes, as someone who's deeply conservative, why is the governor choosing the color blue for this task force? Sounds like he's really a Democrat loyalist. Why not a red ribbon to prove he's a true conservative?
Well, I represent Walmart, and we agree with the color of the task force ribbon. The color blue is best consistent with the Walmart brand.
I object to this choice. Blue is the wrong color ribbon for this task force.
Well, who are you?
I am Mr. P.C. Wrights, and I represent Target, and we want the ribbon to be red, not blue.
Hold it right there. This seems like a tough decision. Why not ask the governor to call a special session at a later date for an important decision as this?
I think this is something worth talking about. I motion that we decide the color of the ribbon today.
I second it. Fine. We can decide it now. Does anyone have any other suggestions for the color of the ribbon?
I think the color should be white.
Whoa, whoa, whoa. Hold on. Definitely not white.
I agree with Mr. P.C. Wrights. Maybe we should choose green for the farmers.
You like the color green because you are a farmer. I think it should be purple, so we can display how Arkansas is an extremely moderate state.
Why are we even discussing this? Shouldn't we be talking about tax reform instead of wasting time with this?
Well, the people have spoken. They believe this is worth talking about, so we are deciding this now.
Excuse me, sir, but shouldn't the color of the ribbon be rainbow to include all types of people?
Please, silence your phones.
I just received a call from Walmart HQ, and they agree with, what was your name again? My name is Fabulous. They agree with Fabulous that the color should be rainbow.
Target concurs with the decision of it being rainbow-colored ribbon.
Is there a motion to make the ribbon rainbow-colored?
I motion to make the color rainbow.
I second the motion. The motion carries because I said so.
The committee will now vote and not be on record to keep the people in the dark. Back to you, Bob.
Thank you, Susan. And thank you for listening to ASA News, The Parrot. Next up, there are reports of a gorilla on top of the Capitol Dome demanding massive sums of taxpayer cash. His name? Medicaid expansion.
PHP Parody.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
All right, so I didn't realize this, but over in Crawford County, you guys know where Crawford County is? Crawford County is, in western Arkansas, northwest Arkansas, right above Sebastian County, right beneath Washington County. Know what we're talking about? I just realized, a lot of people don't know. You know what I'm saying? Like they know the city more, they would know a city more than they would know a county. But anyway, Crawford County has rejected a gun ban for county buildings. David Hughes reports for the Northwest Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. And I forgot about this, but apparently there was a shooting incident 6 years ago at the Crawford County Courthouse. Okay. And apparently this is now, they're trying to, they don't want weapons, or there was a proposal. They don't want weapons at the courthouse, and it failed. Okay. They rejected the proposed ordinance, but notice, like, they didn't want anybody in the courtroom with a concealed carry license, still would be prohibited. And it was even if you had the new enhanced garbage bill, enhanced carry, they were going to say you couldn't carry even under the enhanced provisions, which again is garbage. Found that interesting. I'm glad that it failed, though. So you had the JPs, and you had 9 out of the 11 JPs who voted on the proposed ordinance Monday night voted against it. So it failed 9 to 11. I'm sorry, 9 to 2 is it? Sorry, yeah. So 9 of the 11. And let's see here. The only exceptions would have been for law enforcement officers, members of the National Guard, and members of the American Armed Forces acting in the line of duty. And so you had common sense arguments like, you have Justice of the Peace Jason Peppas said, quote, in the paper, "I don't think it would hurt a thing," meaning having guns, "because we all know all these shootings take place in a minute or a minute and a half, and the cavalry can't get there fast enough." Now, that is exactly the truth. But my question is, there was a shooting at the Crawford County Courthouse, and it happened, 6 years ago. Why now? And the only thing I can think of is because of what the mainstream media has been reporting on for such a long time. Obviously, the shooting in Florida tragedy. We had another school shooting just yesterday, and so is now. I guess it's interesting to me that even in Arkansas, you'll have elected officials who have this reaction. They have this need when we have evil that manifests itself for people to see in the world. They want to attempt to do something about it. And it is very important that we admit that is a natural urge, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? But when your ideas are actually going to get more people killed by making, armed citizenry less armed, then we've got to point that out, Anyway, we got to take a break, folks. Back in just a moment.
A PAC check from our governor, his PAC, and so it looked like I had taken, to an outsider that didn't really know how I was budgeting, they would have said, okay, you got this money from our governor, and now you put it straight into Paul Harrell's program. At that point, Paul, I didn't even know that you had done some reshuffling and had come under what is now known as Conduit Media.
Yeah.
So, because if you remember the day I said, Paul, who do I make the check out to? You? And you said, no. Conduit Media.
Right.
At first I thought, oh my gosh, this is going to put a bullseye on me now for sure. Because
either way it would.
Well, yeah. But, I mean, there was already one on me, but then this one glowed in the dark.
So you're saying you got pressure after you made an ad buy. By the way, you won by 12 points. We're on a great station, out of Northeast Arkansas. It's very well listened to by conservatives. And your ads,
it's my base.
Exactly. And your ads were, this is what I did what I said I was going to do, and you won by 12 points. And that's one of the reasons why. In my opinion, but you're saying you got pushback from establishment Republicans for advertising on this program?
Again, Senator Cooper let me know he was very disappointed in me, and I think even embarrassed that I would put campaign funds into
it's funny because
the program.
See, John wasn't embarrassed to come on this program on almost a daily basis when he was running in the special election for his current seat. And I need to make
the
that
point I'm making today about that is I've not changed. I'm the same guy that I was back when I first started this political journey. And I'm for those conservatives out there that are listening this morning, you don't have to worry about supporting the Paul Harrell program. You don't have to worry about supporting Conduit. Yes, they stir people up, but isn't it time that we are stirred a little bit? Because if you don't like what you're seeing and what's happening, this is one avenue that you can use to make sure that at least all the little moving parts are kind of spotlighted.
Yeah, that's exactly. I really appreciate that. Yeah.
Well, and the thing is, how long have we known each other?
Gosh, Brant, I don't know how long.
It's been a while. Your pastor's been a friend of mine for decades.
2012 or something.
So we go back a long way. Yeah. And I'm loyal. And I have repeatedly said over and over, I'm not going to go on social media, and blast my governor.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
I bought a Led Zeppelin 4 album for the song Stairway to Heaven. Let me tell you about the internet tax. Let me just explain this to you, okay? I wear Wrangler blue jeans, all right? Why? Because they're cheap. I'm buying for $19.95 a pair. And they make my booty look better, so I'm told. Main Street in Arkansas today is bleeding. And they are bleeding because they are at a disadvantage to the online retailers. And it will tell you how much money you have spent with VictoriaSecret.com or wherever you shop. In 1974, I bought a Doobie Brothers 8-track tape for the song Blackwater on it. Anybody remember that one? It was good. Who have chosen to do business in this state. Now, people say, what are we going to do if this passes and we have all that money? That's for us to decide. But I ask you, what are we going to do if we do not pass it and we lose our brick and mortar stores, our stores that employ our citizens in our towns? Mr. Chair, I'd like to make just a couple of comments. One, Mr. Waters said that this is an unconstitutional bill, and it is. We can either fund the future of Arkansas, we can either take care of our Main Street businesses, or we can just say to hell with it. In 1995, I bought a CD, a Shania Twain CD. It had a song on it I liked and I wanted. Whose bed have your boots been under?
Whose bed have your boots been under? Whose bed have your boots
They're closing the limited, whatever they sell, I don't know. We see what the budget is. Everybody wants, or a lot of people want to cut taxes. Other people want to fund certain projects. We have to have money to do that. If you have special projects, if you want to fund pre-K, you have to vote for this bill. If you want to fund highways, you could vote for this bill. We have to decide how to divvy it up. In total, this could amount to $150 million a year or more. That's my viewpoint on this. I don't consider it a new tax. In 2011, I downloaded a Lady Gaga song, Born This Way. Any woman that wears a meat dress, I've just got a lot of respect for, you know.
And for the record, I always try to get a good-looking woman sitting beside me.
And after it passed out of the Transportation Committee overwhelmingly, I did what a lot of us do, especially when we get older. Representative Hendren, I went into the men's room, and as I was standing there staring at the wall, as we all do, I heard a voice beside me. It was a man that said, now listen to this. The man said, one thing you didn't mention.
And for the record, I always try to get a good-looking woman sitting beside me. Which school you want to close, which prison you want to shut down. Or are we going to draw lots to throw people out of nursing homes? How are we going to fund these issues? We all know that. We passed medical marijuana here. I didn't know we'd realized we'd started smoking it yet.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it.
All right, so if you don't know, that was State Representative Dan Douglas's music montage. All of those clips were taken, recorded, or actually they were said last year in the 2017 session. And then we got to work and used his own words and, made a music montage based on his playlist. So my favorite quote in that whole thing, Joe, you have a favorite, but my favorite is, they're closing the limited, whatever they sell, I don't know. That is my favorite one, and it cracks me up every single time. They're closing the limited, whatever they sell, I don't know. It's like, did he just hear that somewhere? Trying to raise the internet sales tax. Now, does that sound like a Republican to you, though? I mean, if you listen to that whole thing, I mean, does he sound like he is, implementing the Republican platform, or does he sound like he's implementing the Democrat platform? Honest question. Joe, what is your favorite part of that montage? Oh, no, you were saying it was we passed medical marijuana, right?
Oh,
Isn't that
yeah.
yours?
We passed medical marijuana. Oh my
Miracle.
Gosh. Medical marijuana bill. I didn't know we guys started smoking it yet.
Yeah, that is a good one. That's the very end. Man, what a great that was fun. It was fun to put together. Anyway, he has a primary opponent, Dan Douglas, in a guy by the name of Scott Richardson, who's actually, I think he's been on the program. He's been on at least once. I want to say he's been on twice, but I know he's at least been on once. We need to have him back on the program. We really do. We passed medical marijuana. I didn't realize we'd started smoking it yet. That's my favorite. And as I was standing there at the wall, as we all do, I heard a voice beside me. That's so much fun. All right, so here is the next. I want to go here. John Woods, okay? The public corruption trial of John Woods will proceed. Look at this. Doug Thompson and Ron Wood with this headline, U.S. graft case appeal rejected. Eighth Circuit panel cites lack of jurisdiction in brief ruling. I mean, this is a detailed article. I mean, it keeps going. Of course, I wonder if the people who are reporting on the public corruption trial of John Woods are getting tired of anytime something new happens, then they basically have to, at the end of the article, summarize everything else that's happened. And that includes all of Woods' charges and Randall Shelton's charges and the, Orrin Paris, all those charges. I wonder if they're getting tired of this. I'm ready for, my point is I'm just ready for this to go to trial. So, Joe, throw this up there for them. Here's John Woods waving. When was this photo taken? Yeah, this was back in November.
Can I just say something about this photo?
Of course you can.
He just looks like a very uncomfortable individual.
Well, he's been indicted, so I'm sure we
indicted. Indicted.
He's been indicted, so it's gonna be pretty. He's gonna be uncomfortable. I think anybody would. That picture was taken in November of last year, so he had already been indicted. Yeah, it had already happened. All right, so I believe it had already happened. I mean, I'm like 99% sure it had already happened. All right, so here we go. They were trying to throw the case out. Okay. You had attorneys for John Woods, Orrin Paris III, and Randall G. Shelton. And they're trying to say that because the FBI special agent Robert Cesario, who was the chief investigator in the case, had a hard drive and for some reason wiped it twice and deleted some recordings the defense says could be relevant to their defense, that you should, throw the whole thing out. Now, according to the government, those recordings were not just on that laptop. They're saying what Cesario did is weird, suspicious, and it needs to be investigated because it doesn't make sense. But they still have the recordings. They still have all of the recordings, according to the government. So why would you throw the case out when they've been indicted? This has to do with the U.S. District Judge Timothy Brooks, and he said, "Tough, I'm dismissing. I'm refusing the defendant's motion to dismiss." He did this back in March, March the 2nd, I guess. So it's still March, and so the appeal then went to the 8th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals because they're trying to get it dismissed, and the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals said no, and they cited a lack of jurisdiction. But this is what they were claiming. Listen to this. The notice of the appeal claimed that Brooks' ruling to proceed to trial violated the defendant's right to due process due to the bad faith destruction of evidence potentially useful to the defendants by the government. On Tuesday, a 3-judge panel denied the appeal in a 2-sentence ruling. Quote, "The court orders that this appeal be dismissed for lack of jurisdiction. The appellant's joint emergency motion for stay pending appeal is denied as moot." End quote. Well, so there we go. So we're going to trial in April, folks. We're going to trial in April. Let me see here. What else do we have? Brooks' order said that Cesario's actions were wrong. A grand jury issued an indictment against the 3 defendants, and the public has an interest. So if you go back to Brooks' original order, or denying, the motion to dismiss the case because of what some FBI agent did, that you could make the argument might have even been intentional sabotage. I'm just saying. That would be one of my suspicions, just because of how all this is tied together, and there's so many people involved here. And, that base, plus the sigh of relief that you felt out of Little Rock when John Woods pled not guilty, because if he had pled guilty, he might have turned some evidence over that could maybe find others indicted or in jail. But Timothy Brooks' original order said that while Cesario's actions were wrong, a grand jury issued an indictment against the 3 defendants, and the public has an interest in seeing it prosecuted. Thank you, Tim Brooks. Yeah, and then it goes on, just as the defendants have an interest in holding the government to its burden of proof at trial. Man, can you imagine what the proof is going to be? I mean, I know we have audio recordings, but, I mean, when this case goes to trial, I mean, there's going to be stuff that we're going to get that we don't know yet, because there's a lot of stuff that's under seal that we don't have yet in the John Woods trial. And you can see what's already started to leak out just in the prosecution of what's going on with preferred family health care, right? I mean, look at what the government revealed. The government was trying to keep Milton Rusty Russell Cranford from making bail. And so in so doing, they had to disclose some things. And what they disclosed was that he tried to kill a guy, or he tried to hire a guy to kill a guy. Whoa, that's weird. That's also an understatement. My apologies. That's crazy, okay? And then they also disclosed that he was trying to get, the county judge of Jefferson County, Wilkins, to lie to investigators for him. And so the prosecution up in Missouri says not only does Milton Rusty Cranford need to be denied bail, but he also, because he tried to kill a guy, but he also gave this Wilkins guy $100,000 in bribes, and then he tried to get him to lie to the FBI. So this guy does not need to go anywhere. We need to hold this guy in our custody. And that was just from a simple, hearing of just trying to keep Rusty Cranford in the custody of law enforcement. And we got that information. Can you imagine the information that we may get when John Woods goes to trial and they start hashing all of this out and we see what the government has? What other names are going to be brought up? I mean, you have people that are going to be called to testify. You got state representatives that are going to be called to testify. You got Bureau of Legislative Research officials that are going to be called to testify. What are allegedly we have, according to Max Brantley over the Arkansas Times, there's as many as 20 legislators that have communicated with the FBI and expressed, what they are willing to testify, what they are willing to say in court. I mean, this thing is an absolute. I mean, we could have, and it's going to trial in April. I mean, we could have a lot of things just laid bare right before the primary. Right before the primary. And if we don't get some of the stuff until after the primary, that's going to look real suspicious. I'm just going to say that. I mean, that's going to look extremely strange. People tell me names. I'm not going to repeat them because there's no point in doing that if you don't have actual proof. But there are people that say, and they contact me and they say, this person is likely going to get caught up in this, or that person is likely going to get caught up in this when it all starts coming out. And let me just say this. I think we can all agree that it is wrong for a legislator to get paid by someone other than the government to pass legislation. And what I mean other than the government is they're obviously employed. Obviously they make money serving. What I'm saying is you can't take money from somebody and say, hey, I'll get your bill passed if you give me X amount of dollars, right? That is a crime. You're not able to do that. We can all agree. But with any system of rules, there is always, almost always, a loophole. And something tells me those loopholes have been exploited for a really long time. Anyway, the news today, again, the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals denies John Wood's appeal to dismiss his case. We're going to trial in April. Get your popcorn ready, folks. We got to take a break. Back in a moment.
This is State Representative Dan Sullivan with a Liberty Moment. The Declaration of Independence states, to secure these rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. In other words, people are responsible for the character of their Congress. If that body be ignorant, reckless, or corrupt, it's because the people tolerate ignorance, recklessness, and corruption. If it be intelligent, brave, and pure, it's because the people demand these high qualities. If the next centennial does not find us a great nation, it will be because those who represent the enterprise and culture and morality of the nation do not abide in controlling the political forces. James Garfield. This is Dan Sullivan with a Liberty Moment.
Paid for by Sullivan for Arkansas. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
This is ASA News, The Parrot. With breaking news from the Capitol in Little Rock. I'm Bob Baloney. There are reports circling around from politicians who are in the know, and the same phrase keeps being used. That phrase is new revenue generation. Let's go to our reporter on the ground from the Capitol, Haley Hogwash. Haley?
Thanks, Bob. Yes, it seems the more politicians I talk to, the more I hear the phrase new revenue generation. We're trying to figure out exactly what that means, but you can rest assured it will be good for the people of Arkansas.
Haley, it certainly sounds like something good. I like how the phrase uses the word generation. That makes me think this has got to be doing something positive for our children in the future. Haley?
Yes, Bob, some new developments. I've just been speaking to some people who are here and are not politicians, and they tell me the phrase new revenue generation is actually code for a new tax.
Oh, my. Well, if this is true, Haley, that would add to a growing list of new taxes that have barely made any headlines at all, so it's best not to discuss them here on ASA News, The Parrot.
Yes, Bob, I know it's sure to make government officials angry that their phrasing of the new revenue generation has been changed by the people and called a tax increase.
I would expect an announcement from Mother Government soon to set the record straight. What is the new tax, revenue generation, Haley?
Well, this new tax, a new revenue generation would add to a growing list. First, there was a revenue generation on movies, books, and songs that people download using the internet. And next, there was the tax increase. I'm sorry, Bob, the new revenue generation on all purchases made using the internet. And now I'm told this new revenue generation is a tax on the people's patience.
I realize the people don't like it, Haley, but specifically, what is the new tax? I mean, revenue generation.
No, Bob, I'm telling you, according to the activists here at the Capitol who have gathered and are listening to some radio broadcast, the revenue generation is literally taxing the patience of the people of Arkansas. I'm told the less patience you have with the government,
The government better not tax our patience.
the more they will tax your patience and the more money you will owe at a later date. I'm also told the collection method on taxing your patience will be decided in a newly formed multicolored ribbon task force.
How taxing.
PHP Parody.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
I say, want to comment here on the Facebook page. Lane on Facebook writing, given the right to bear arms recognized in our national and state constitutions, why are we required to disarm when going into our government buildings? Don't we, the people, own these buildings? Someone is not representing us and wants to disarm us. Interesting, yeah. Well, that was the whole resolution, again, out of Crawford County, which was just very odd. Again, it failed, and that's good. So, hey, folks, recapping today on the program, just some really good stuff. We started out by talking about Governor Asa Hutchinson's magic numbers and how his administration has pivoted from, saying that if we were to, end a program, a big government welfare program, that it was going to cost the state money, now reducing it to saving the state money. And so that was an interesting exploration in hypocrisy in the first hour. We also talked to pastor and a member of Patriots of Act 746, Mr. Dan Borum, who had an excellent analogy about the disconnect in the Marble Palace with his time in seminary for several years and what happened, the like-mindedness and how, you get cut off from anybody else. And so that's a very interesting analogy. We did that in the first hour. Then we just talked with Mr. Josh Waters about the tax task force. I think the consensus in terms of anticipation, the anticipatory consensus would be that tax cuts are going to be what are called revenue neutral tax cuts, which are, in my opinion, not really tax cuts. So I would even go a step further. I think that the government's going to end up getting more money when this is all said and done than they have now, which is very, very worrisome. And then, of course, John Wood's case is going to trial in April, and so we look forward to that because I want to know what other bits of information that lead to other politicians in terms of corruption does the government have. And at the same time, we also have this drip, 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 more shoes to drop coming from this preferred family health care case as well. That is all the time we have for today on the program. We'll be back here tomorrow. Arkansas, thank you for listening. Be safe.